Hi, and welcome to Oxford Empowered. This episode is all about nutrition, problems and solutions for you, to empower you to make good life choices. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome back to Oxford Empowered. Today's guest in the first segment is Cecily Alexander. She's a registered dietitian who has been a fixture in southwestern Ontario. Many lives have been affected by her knowledge and information that she's imparted to help people make good choices in terms of dietary intake and solutions for their medical problems. And as such, Cecily, I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Brenda. I really want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to introduce my book, Just Eat Less. And again, the second part is important, easier said than done, because it's not as easy as the diets that you see in the market, all the books that are out there. There won't be so many different plans if it was easy.
Right.
So this book takes you through some of the difficulties and some of the challenges that you may have in losing weight.
Wonderful. You know, it's really a pivotal point. I remember way back in the mid-'70s when fast food really started popping up in Oxford County, and life's changed with that intake of new, fresh, adventurous foods, so to speak. But the ravages of that over time have really had their toll on us.
They have.
There's a great majority of people who are overweight or struggling with their weight.
Yes.
And as such, I think it's really wonderful that you've been able to create this wonderful book, because based on your years of experience, you have a lot of information to impart that I think Oxford County and beyond really need to get their hands onto.
Absolutely. And I really think this is the approach that most dietitians use in terms of just eating less. So, as I said, what does that mean? And it is an introduction of more fruits and vegetables into our daily cooking and our preparation of foods. So you start off by thinking of your meat and starch portions. Those are the two main ones, right? And as the picture in my book shows, quite often we would have a big meat or big starch, especially in the fast foods, and a small vegetable. Really what I want you to do is to change that, but not really change the foods that you prepare.
Right.
You're just tweaking it in terms of preparation style. So for example, I give the example of Asian cooking.
Right.
You never go into an Asian restaurant, let's say Chinese is one of the Asian restaurants, and get a big hunk of beef or a big hunk of chicken. What you have is meat diced with vegetable, or 3 or 4 vegetables mixed into it.
Right.
And the same thing with your starch. So those are some of the things that I want you to tweak in the recipes that you're preparing now. So the book really gives you an introduction into how you do that and some recipes that you can utilize that way. I also talk about vegetables being so much more interesting, because in our grandparents' days, or even some of our parents, you got an overcooked vegetable that wasn't that varied, 2 or 3 or 4 different vegetables. Right now, there's really a burst. Have you noticed that in the market in vegetables that are available? You know, you have kale and you have bok choy and different things that you can introduce into making salads that we didn't do before. I talk in the book about a no salad variation where you can cut up tomatoes, cucumbers, carrots, yellow and green beans, or some of the variety of neo vegetables, and just cut that up and make a homemade dressing that'll go with it, and that's your vegetable choice.
That's
lovely and beautiful. The other thing I want to talk about too, because it's not only introducing more vegetables, it's fruits into your diet. And fruits have gotten a negative rap with the low carbohydrate diets.
Right.
Because I keep being asked, is fruits fattening? And should I have fruits? And fructose, you've heard a lot about fructose in the market.
Yes.
So fruits have natural fructose. So that sometimes is a misconception of whether you can have fruit in your diet. The one mantra I say over and over again is, I've counseled for 30 years and I've never looked at a diet history for weight and said, you know what's your problem? You have too much fruit. It's not our problem. It's not our problem.
Right.
So I really want fruit to be reintroduced, and this is whole fruit, not juice. We do have an excess of juice, and a lot of the juices are not pure, they're sweetened. So not juice, but introduce more fruits into your diet as snacks or even as desserts, maybe combined with a yogurt or something else healthy. It could even be a small scoop of ice cream with fruits on top of it.
Well, the natural enzymes in fruit and the antioxidants and the vitamins and all those things are natural sources that our body can readily absorb.
Absolutely.
And we need them. They're the building blocks to our body, right?
Yes, very healthy.
Yes.
So the other question I get asked is, why is your diet or your eating plan going to work versus other eating plans?
Right.
And what I've tried to do, and you may know as a nurse, as a health professional, we have this new approach that if you Google it online, there are tons of workshops for health professionals using something called motivational interviewing, behavioral interviewing. And this is where, with the client, we really get the client to evolve what they can do or not do.
Right.
And this came up just around the time when I started writing my book. And I thought, oh my gosh, in a book, how can I introduce something that you do on a one-to-one basis?
Right.
Well, I have. And it's based on the question where they say, ask, don't tell. Right? So I ask the typical behavioral interviewing question at the end of each chapter, where I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how possible is this for you to follow that lifestyle change? So the person may score themselves as a 5, and I want it to be a self-reflection of if they can then, what they have to do, think it through to be a little bit higher, to implement that change of whatever change I'm talking about in the book. So I think that's significant because I want clients, so people that read the book, to use it as a workbook.
Yes.
Where they score. If they're not losing or if things aren't working, they return to that chapter and then they themselves think of solutions of how they can move beyond whatever the concept is.
Well, it's true because it's one thing to change the physical. It takes 21 days to create a habit oftentimes they talk about, right?
Absolutely, 3 weeks.
But until you get the emotional component going, you really don't engage with the change until that happens. And then once you get the emotional part going, then your spirit embraces it. So it is a body, mind, and spirit aspect.
Absolutely. And that's a super point that you brought up. I talk about it in the book, about 3 weeks, so 21 days being the time that you change. There are lots of different chapters that touch on important things like fiber. I do talk about exercise. I talk about maintenance. All those are important. But one other point in our time this morning I wanted to bring up was the point about being half full.
Right.
Because that, again, is an important thing for you to assess within your eating. So you talked about supersizing, or the bigger sizes that we get when we are at restaurants or eating out, or even at home, how we serve ourselves to bigger sizes. What I want the client to do, or the reader to do, is to stop when they're half full. It takes an hour for us to be satisfied or for satiety to kick in. So that's why, and it takes us 15 minutes to 30 minutes to eat a meal.
Right.
30 minutes at the max to eat a meal if you time yourself. So I really want you at the 15-minute point or the half an hour point to stop. And then wait an hour and really assess if you're still hungry. You're not going to be. And satiety will kick in at that half-hour stage where you think you're half full.
Right.
And if it's, say, 4 hours before your next meal and you feel hungry again, that's where the fruit comes in, or some of the other snack suggestions I have in the book that are quite healthy choices.
Well, this is the thing, though, fast food and fast eting.
Fast eating.
Yeah,
we
that's
do
a problem, isn't it?
We don't chew. We don't, put our knives and forks down in between bites. It's definitely significant.
That's right.
So it's some of those habits that I'm trying to change, but I also want to get back to the concept of the meals that we prepare. And it was really interesting at the last hospital job that I had. Most hospitals in the past, and even still some today, had what we called a cycle menu. And as dietitians, we would look at that and we wanted every single day to be different. There'd be 2 choices. And we go, okay, there was chicken yesterday, chicken today, we can't do that, let's get another meeting. But the hospital I worked in last changed to having a restaurant menu style.
Right.
Really, when you looked at it, not that as much variety. But what I found is people eat out of habit or taste of things that they like. Not a lot of variety. The child in the pediatric unit at pizza. The little old granny that loved meatloaf, may order meatloaf.
Right.
Like there's a lot of repetition. So that's why, with a diet that gives you their eating plan or foods that you can purchase or things that are given a major food groups, how do you adapt and make all those changes into your lifestyle? You don't. And even if you do, you're back to your old eating patterns once you've lost a few pounds and the diet returns. So this way, I want you to look at your recipes, the things that you're doing, and adapt them with more vegetables and fruit.
Well, it's very possible. I know with mashed potatoes, you can put leek in, you can put all kinds of other vegetables in.
Cauliflower.
Yes, exactly. You know, things that blend in, or even add a little bit of color. You know, so you can take your starch and you can still make it much more vibrant and more nutritious by adding things to it.
Yes.
You know, so there's a lot of recipes out there too. I watched a show the other day where they actually made a strawberry cobbler using asparagus in it.
Yes.
You know,
And,
it's great.
and brownies with beans. I know this may sound odd, but there's some really good recipes out there.
Yes.
Now, in terms of serving sizes, I wanted to talk about that because, as you know, dietitians promote Canada's food guide, and people go, I can't eat all those starches. I mean, if I did that, I would be really obese, so that's the reason why I'm obese. I think there's a really big misconception on what a serving is.
Yes.
And I'll give you the example of, say, a slice of bread versus a bagel.
Right.
Most people don't realize that a bagel is probably half or almost all of their starch servings for the day, because it works out to sometimes about 5 servings because it's so dense and higher caloried. So that's something you have to pay attention to. But I am suggesting to do it with your eating pattern presently. So if you're having 2 slices of bread, then go to 1. If you're having a cup of rice or pasta, go to half a cup. And it's just adapting what you're doing to less and trying to evaluate satiety, if you really need more or not.
I think that this is a valuable segment because so many people just eating a little less can make a big difference, right? Putting those vegetables in will help to fill you up and give you satiety there. And I think that you've done a wonderful job in bringing your knowledge, your years of experience into this very, very useful and practical guide that people can use like a friend. And it will help guide them during the rough parts. Just reading over a certain segment will really enrich their life.
Yes, absolutely. And as I mentioned all the other chapters, because maintenance is a big one. I talk about restaurant eating. I talk about eating out. I talk about willpower. That's a really big one.
It is.
And we tend to, if we eat something that we think we shouldn't, we do a lot of negative reinforcement, and we give ourselves a lot of negative self-messages, and I talk about how to change that. But one of the ways you can change that is thinking all foods can fit. There are no good or bad foods.
Right.
There's no good or bad foods. A chocolate is not a bad food.
No.
It's just, if you eat lots of it, it could end up you gaining weight. But if you think it's not a bad food, then if you have maybe that one Lindo chocolate, you won't feel guilty, because I'm saying it can fit, even in the time that you're trying to cut back.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Cecily, I want to thank you very much for being with us. Our segment has really come to a close very, very quickly. Can you tell everybody how to get hold of your book?
Yes, and I'm only selling it online presently at www.justeatless.ca.
Oh, wow.
So you can purchase it then.
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks
you
for being with us on Oxford
I'm really
Empowered.
pleased. Thank you.
And that is it for this segment. Join us right after the break, and we'll have more empowering information for you.